Whether crickets or those among you courageous, Merry Christmas, ChristmaHaniKwanzaRama Lama, Ding Dong, GeistaMythakrishnaMeleKalikimaka. Did I get them all? Happy holiday. I hope you all had a cool Yule. We're here again. It's that important. In the war, there's no holidays. That said, I hope all y'all had a great time with your families, whatever your beliefs, whatever your faiths. It's important to remember that much, if you could. That's probably the only important thing. If we could focus on that, we might be able to start from the bottom and work back out like we started this whole nonsense. Starting out, we talked about, I was hearing talking about tribes and things, and as I see today, the tribal consideration is really a non-starter. And yet they have us talking about it as if it's something that we can relate to. It's a UN imposition, and for everybody that just rolled their eyes, you really need to go read. It's right there for us to see what they're doing to us. In fact, they take truths and they twist them just enough. They contort them just enough that they're not actually viable. They hand you ideas that you readily accept, and within them is the poison pill. And so every week I come along, as you hear me say this over and over, in a way, I really don't say anything different. Maybe people get tired of hearing what I'm saying, but I don't see the response in action that has to happen. It's not just knowing a thing, it's doing a thing. And that comes from, well, what do I do? Well, you just got to find something important. I can't make that decision. What I hope I can do, and I seem to be able to do, when I'm honest with the subject matter about what my limits are, and I have to necessarily be anyway, it doesn't make any sense for me to talk outside of my experience or knowledge base, no matter how comprehensive I think it might be. You have to proof it out, everything out yourself, and I can give you a faster run-up for that. But I can't choose what that's going to be, what's going to be important to you to stop. There's plenty to stop. I mean, I think all these things going through my mind just flash through my mind. They're just, we can talk about a lot of philosophical things, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. What I used to do in my youth, at the time I thought I knew about everything. And I knew a lot. Like I said, I used to play the trivia games, and one day I just said, why do I know this nonsense? Why do I know all this trivia? Let's get to some meat. Yeah, I'm not a vegetarian there either. And so, then I got it in my face about 3 decades ago, and that started it off. Got enough principle in me to say, wait a minute now, I can't let that happen to me. Not like that. I'm not a criminal. The people that we looked up to were now fraudulently and criminally mischaracterizing my conduct as a crime. I mean, even making of invalid mischaracterizations under administrative law, which I didn't know at the time. Wasn't so smart then. Intelligent, I should say. Remember, smart's not intelligent, man. Oh boy, that's the problem. They're getting us locked in. They're getting us locked into these things. What does smart mean? It's not intelligent. So maybe it means stupid minions advocating reflexive technocracy. And for those of you with sensitive ears, that was actually spelled STOOPID. Maybe as we see it, as we've sued in 2013 to stop, or at least get on the record, lay the foundation stone for y'all. If you just, as I said, just pick up what we're doing. Help, lock arms and let's run in the right direction. You don't have to be the same guy. We can always unlock arms at some point, but we need to start a massive front of action. But maybe it's actually smart means seditious minions advocating reflexive technocracy. Smart is not too intelligent. And yet we embrace it. Silent weapons for quiet war. You plug yourself in. Serious, serious problem. And with that plugging in is a diminishment on many, many levels, which I try to explain every week. And I try to explain, I don't try to do anything. I am doing it every week. See how we diminish even the power of our own self, of our own action. I want to come softly as I can with my switch here to prod you along into the right direction and to stand up, being able to stand up in the world and come against those that just don't care about you anyway. The reason what you're seeing and arguing against is the fact of that criminal nature. I just put it that way. I don't know what else to say. It's a criminal condition against us. and you can liken it to all kinds of names. And I ask you, get to a name quick, and then go to work to stop that, because we can ponder the names all we want. It comes in many nuances. It's multidimensional. Absolutely, they tell us everything. As we're all celebrating goodwill toward men, people over the last year have died without good reason. And I suppose I'm leaving open that people should die for good reason, I guess. In a way, I was happy to see Syria freed up, even just East Aleppo. Maybe it's not so pretty over there, but they're not underneath the pressure, the power, the killing, the threat of the United States, UK, Israel, the silent, the Mossad that roars, as I wrote in a Twitter yesterday. Don't forget about, no one wants to mention Israel in the room, scaring the elephant to go stomp on everybody in the world. Goodwill toward men? Are you kidding me? And I'm going to go off on a tangent. I can tell it's coming, but I'm going to resist. 700 million androids pre-installed with Chinese software is getting over to that, and you're plugged in nature as you continue to be crickets. I don't know what more to say about some of this stuff. Chinese software company called AddUps, whose firm comes pre-installed on a 700 million Android devices, has been found to be able to collect personal data information from users without their knowledge or consent. It is pervasive in Android units. I wanted you to know, this is the thing I've been trying to explain. You're going to be given your place to be part of this thing, and your hardware is completely compromised. Now, I won't even go through the story. Just understand, if you have an Android, they're compromised. This is why my problem with the Google made all this stuff to start with. Guess what? Even Google got stung on this one. They have to relook at this company called AddUps as the firmware provider. Even Google themselves. It's in lots of things that are Lenovo products, which was a given when IBM sold the computers from China. I think if you were listening to the broadcast, I told you I don't know why IBM actually was allowed to do that. Where are we going to go as a government? Now, looking at yourself as a government and protecting yourself against the evils of the world, notwithstanding the brutality the United States has become, but in the more innocent sense that you protect yourself, where does the United States of America go for its computer technology now when IBM sold their hardware line off to China? Becomes a very real problem. ZTE was mentioned, and there's others in the article that are mentioned. The Barnes & Noble device called Nook has a problem. They immediately came out and said, well, they're not collecting data. And I would ask you to say, well, how do they know? But they decide, despite the denial, they're going to work hard to get rid of the problem. Okay, so keep it up. Keep taking all this stuff. The Windows 10 is the same problem. See, I don't see why AddUps is being identified, but Microsoft is not. And I've heard lots of people that will support what Microsoft is doing. And I don't mean on the negative side, they're just state. You want to hear the word status. They're not systems people. They actually say that Windows 10 has some much greater security, but it was a sieve to start with. If it was such a great thing, why are they continually having to patch it? We are sitting in a very sensitive position as we move forward in this condition. And I guess part of me says, if we tries to think of it this way, if we don't understand these vulnerabilities, we'll be blind to most all the others. We will focus on our pet vulnerability, but we'll be exposing our backsides to all kinds of other intrusions. And here's one that comes up. It's my main reason to want to root devices out and get rid of. I don't like the idea that you become as I was talking here the last few weeks, the parasite to your own computer, as these suppliers of the OSs are hosts that you parasitically feed off of, that they control, they block you out, they do whatever they think they need to do in order to keep the big data rolling. And to those of you that listened last week, I was telling you about my colleague had a problem with his Windows 10, and they found out it was a firewall block. He finally went into the firewall, and apparently you can, if you have the same problem where all of a sudden you can't get the internet on Windows 10. The last update seemed to have a problem if you had certain software. He went into the firewall and he was able to reselect everything to get himself back online. So those of you that are savvy that way, you can maybe help yourself that way if you do have a blockout. But this is what they do. You don't even have control of your own systems. They're now leasing the software that you use. No, it's not outright given to you. So they're learning. This is writing on the wall many, many decades ago. When I started reading the licenses, I said, these contracts are set up here. One day they just start charging for them. They're getting everybody. It's like drug dealers. They give you a little bit. They give you a little bit. You get into the habit, and now it's going to cost you. In this case, it's costing you in a silent way, and it's a big vulnerability in my mind. A lot of people might say, well, I don't get into all that, folks. You're not going to be able to avoid it. You're just not. I don't see anybody really setting up. We talk about it, but I don't see lots of people setting up to avoid the problem. So we're having to defend ourselves in ways that are unknown to us. I said, unless you make the hardware, and then you make the software, you can't possibly know. And then there's always some another critter out there that's going to try to figure out if they can hack your stuff just because they're bored or something. I don't know where that came from. But this is all the problem. It comes from the internalization of the fallen nature that we have. It said we can call it the 7 sins. There's probably a whole handful of sins. It's the fallen nature. It's the frailty that we have in us as people that causes certain people to fall victim to their own lack of interest, I suppose, and then go look out and see what you got. And I don't know what the answer to that is, except that I can see that, again, governments anymore, they don't really work to inspire people. And this is my problem. I came from whether I was talented enough, it really wasn't the point, but I certainly was inspired to create things in the world. Whether or not I had any talent was irrelevant. I thought I could try, I could work it out. In fact, I had to work hard a lot because I wasn't talented that way. I was just capable to pick stuff up and do things. But I walked into the world being inspired to do things. It's been slowly, and it took a long time to be beat down out of me. And now I'm seeing that there's really, it isn't, again, as I say all the time, it's just not what it is. We've been duped. The potential sits there, folks. That's, I guess, another part of the optimism in me. The potential sits there for us to make a great day. It's not going to happen on all our fairy tales that we tell ourselves, but we have a way to make a great day and be that example. We can come back and do this, but we have to have the will to step up and do it, and we have to be knowledgeable. And we're not going to do it on just being able to chat and talk and have an opinion. A lot of the point is here we don't know anything. That's why I certainly went beyond media, because I don't use the media as the media. I don't use it for what it tells us and try to be the guy that tells you to be the first one in to tell you and how brilliant I am on my analysis. I say, no, here's a notice to us, and what might that mean, and this is how we might anticipate that, to be able to deal with what I see in this dire time, to be dire actions being taken against us. That's why I'm not really too impressed with some people that can go through some analysis. Certainly, there's insights we need to be gained by it, but to be struck in the point and stuck in the mold that I'm going to be media, I'm going to tell you the news, is really, in my mind, it's ineffectual. It's us talking about the past. And the people that we're up against are way into the future. They have the plans, folks. I just keep telling you this. Until you get involved and you start seeing what I'm seeing and you do against what I'm talking about, I don't think you fully appreciate it. You just dismiss what I'm saying, or you think you know what I'm saying, and you move on. Yet I haven't found really hardly anybody that actually understands what I'm saying or do with what I say how it needs to be done to give them the first insight on how actually easily this whole thing brings brought into contention and then demise, and then we position ourselves with the very, very quality principles that we ought to have had and never lost, which over time, these types of things that we're now getting into the digitization of our analog life, they are now being able to control us very clearly along the lines that's needed. That said, you've heard the so-called evil light out there complaining that this digital world is also a very big threat to them. And that's the truth, but we have to use it correctly. As I keep saying, we have tools now are just fantastic tools in order to really work together, and we really don't. We don't at all. And we got people with lots of great intention. Their heart's all in the right spot. Most of them are doing it, in my estimation, doing it wrong, and it's not really my estimation. The result of the action, however intending to do good. It was, however, to fight the man, so to speak, which is not. It's this undead, this fiction in our mind that men have created. We fight the ghost, and we see the result, and the good fight was done, but we are harmed by it. And I've been telling you behind the woodshed, I've learned a thing or two to minimize that. And I was hoping all these years in order to maybe make, those of us coming along, we'd have a big army coming by now, and I'm not seeing it. So I'm a lot disappointed. This story here of the 700 million androids pre-installed with Chinese spyware, this is not even news, folks, but that they now have caught it, just identifies for us a really large vulnerability. And when I was telling you before, when it gets into the hardware side of this, when they put in the hardware the things of your vulnerability, this is almost impossible to work around. In other words, when they put a keylogger as a hardware device into your system, you can't get around that. It has to go through, your keyboard has to go through that. They are going to capture whatever keys are pressed. And we don't know now, the technology is so fantastic, we don't know that they don't build that right into the chips. In fact, the new Intel chips we were reading do that and a whole lot more. So we're dealing in dangerous weapons, if you will, when they're turned on us. And we're finding out that since they can lie and make stuff up, you're not safe because you're honest. So in defense of on digital, we've got vulnerabilities. In the real world, we have vulnerabilities. I ran across a neat little article, A Gentleman's Guide to Self-Defense. I'll pass it on to you. It ends up being very interesting, and I'm not advocating just going out and buy it because I'm saying so. I'm saying this is very interesting inside of what I looked at here was when you take an everyday device, and you don't have to be a victim all the time. And a lot of us are whining about being victimized because we're just not capable in defending ourselves, and that's just another reverse proof that the world's not such a nice place amongst ourselves. But there's this little article here that came up, self-defense guide, a gentleman's self-defense guide, and it ends up showing us that the proper, and you got to find the proper one, the real one, an umbrella can be a very good defense device, and also an offensive device if you get to that point. But it takes the idea, and you can carry this thing anywhere. And so we got this problem when they're infringing upon our Second Amendment rights. What do? They take away our knives. What do we do? How do we defend ourselves? Then the idea here was, it wasn't just about the umbrella, but it caused my thought to say there's all kinds of things in your mind that if the world starts to get in your locale a lot more dangerous, that you need to necessarily consider these things. This umbrella was very neat, very durable. There's two. One's not a good one. One's a spin-off that's no good, and one's the proper one. It's fairly expensive. But the idea was that you can defend yourself with a common umbrella. You don't worry about even the money. If you really need to work, I understand. If you know how to tightly roll a newspaper, that'll help you. Anything in an attack, folks. You just got to start putting our mind a little bit to that. Because I don't know where we start going as you see the insanity that develops. We got a guy that got Trump. If those of you that haven't heard, he actually prevailed in the Electoral College, which was the only other out he could do, and they were doing a big run up to try and throw that on its head. That was all kind of interesting to watch. But he is the president-elect now, as the Electoral College chose him, not you, but them. And so just the fact he isn't even in the office yet, and we're having at least half the country, it seems, or at least the vocal minority, railing about just going to kill everybody. So we don't know where this going to come. We don't know how this is going to be going against us. We have to start being a little more aware. I'm not saying paranoid. I'm saying just look around you. Start putting in your mind what's an even better. If you have nothing else, don't walk away from the house without a nice sturdy pen in your hand. It might be the only thing that you can defend yourself with at some point. So it was just an idea. When I saw it, it was pretty interesting. I didn't even know the existence of the umbrella. But there's a whole bunch of videos that shows you what you can do with a staff, if you will, and in a very short one at that, to help defend yourself. And I'm not so sure I would want to extend that to a cop, but you remember, and be careful. This is another one of those guns I'm going to hand a little kid. You have a use of force statutes, and then you have the right to defend yourself against unlawful interactions that are physical to you with the government. And I don't advise that, because you're walking into a meat grinder of trying to protect yourself, because you're going to have a jury of peers that are going to be stupider or dumber than rocks, and you're going to have to be able to convince them that when you were trying to defend yourself against unlawful arrest, maybe with one of these simple devices, the techniques, and then you hurt somebody, if you did, and you may have to because the other guy's armed to kill you. You're going to have to put in your mind how this all works, and that's what I try to tell you here behind the woodshed. There's a way you go about that. There's a way that you use the right and proper words about utilizing the discussion and explanation of your use of force, the lawful use of force, why it was lawful. This is what I keep telling you about. There's a way to go about describing what you're doing in the context of those occupiers that are against you. The methods I talk about here are kind of universal across the board, because there's a thread of consistency between all, I'll call them jurisdictions. And what am I saying? What am I talking in that regard? Everyone thinks this word jurisdiction is a big question. I just use it in the context of the type of law also. We're talking equity, common law, which everyone doesn't understand. They claim that they understand. They don't know it. You have admiralty. You have commercial law. You have all kinds of law. You have contract law. All kinds of law. And then we have the intermixed legal, which I've told you, once you get in that and you've agreed to it, that's the law for you. And what the administrative side does is that's the law for you when they attach it to you, unless you know how to avoid it. And that's what's going on even right now as I speak to the miners again, where somebody who's inside purports themselves to be a miner's friend is not at all, passing around improper paperwork and having miners who don't know better and don't want to know better, are too lazy to go read the law. They're asking the signature to sign away all their rights and put themselves underneath the agency's authority. Once you do that, the legal is now law for you. And we all have done it. We've all done it, I'm sure, but whether or not you continue it is another thing. You do the very same thing. I talk about minors, but that all of you that have a driver's license do the same thing. So we have a lot of knowledge to have to know. I bring it behind the woodshed every week, even today, even on this special family day for everybody mostly. And if you're here today, thank you very much. But what? And as I just remembered to say, what episode is this? I'm so far out of the time of this. This would be, for those on Prodcast or past cast, will be BTW RLM 194. 194. The lessons from behind the woodshed. Whooping the myriad mind control measures used against you. Anybody doesn't agree with that, you can send me an email, markonthebeastshow.com. Tell me how I'm having, because I need to add that so I can tell all of you. See, there's lots more we can learn. I may not see everything. I guess what I'm now going to start griping on is the lack of interaction that allows us to get along the road. We just say, oh, I know that, or I understand it. Make a decision on whether or not what you hear from me or anybody else is correct, and move along. And it becomes the next chat line. On to something else. The news that just keeps going. And if you listen behind the woodshed, you realize I use the news as a notice to us, and I tie it through the years to be consistent with the truth of what is really going on, the reality, not the fairy tale. And so we have plenty of places to have to be defensive against. We are imposed with more, and that should by itself be enough to tell you don't live in a peaceful society, notwithstanding any discussion to the contrary of that, in the institutions that pretend and purport to give you a peaceful nature, like the sheriff purports to keep the peace. I don't know that anybody actually knows what that is anymore. We'll talk about our opinion, but when you go to the officer, they don't have a clue. And we find that out pretty quickly when I go to the land disposal laws, from which this obligation and duty springs, and nobody understands it. Literally nobody understands it. And so for all of you all that have an idea about that, think you know about what law is and the corruption all, you don't have a clue because you have no foundation. And this is my main problem with a lot of discussions. What I call the fairy tale are ideas that have no context. They have no foundation nor context. I'm pausing a little bit. You need to think about that. You say a word without a context. It doesn't mean anything. You got to put that somewhere. You got to make it relevant and relative to something. Now, we can talk about our fictional ideas, our ethereal things, maybe even our fairy tale. We can talk about all that. But we got a real physical reality working on it. You can talk in words, but if you can't apply it to a foundation and then through a context, it's meaningless babble. And babble on. We have real world conditions that were being put against us. We have to discuss that or not, act against it. More importantly, we can discuss it till we're blue in the face. And maybe we discuss it a one breath past that. We may not be here to discuss it. And that's what they're doing. They're waiting us out. These folks are waiting for me to die, folks. They're waiting for my colleagues to just dry up and blow away. Because that'll be one less witness when they go to commit the crime. That'll be a witness to stop the crime. That's as simple as this really is in a nutshell, except there's a formal communication for it. And we get told where to plug in. We give the offered the devices to plug into. You see they're compromised. It doesn't make sense in the beginning, but we'd all go, we're crickets. We don't care. The world has been made more and more not peaceful around us. And I told you when the war of terror, we found out was the war on terror was actually the war of terror. I told you that there was a conversation that needed to be had more formally that said that the government now has breached its duty to the people when it allowed that. When it allows that it needs to go to necessity, it's breached its duty under its own establishment. I don't need the news to know really what's going on. What I need the news to know is what those guys that are purporting to save us that can't, that have already breached their duty to us are going to do to us. And so here we are going into this season of peace on earth. And my condolences to those that in the world that have died all this year. I don't know. Just a sad thing to hear and watch. And last night, the Russian jet with the military band that was going somewhere with a bunch of reporters crashing. It's highly suspicious, but what do we know? Yeah, all that's caused because we are just a nasty species if we're going to be reduced to the animal. That this subspecies within this caucastocracy we now live, it's worldwide. In the time we're walking into supposedly peace on earth, FBI warns of possible Islamic-inspired attacks in the U.S. Fear, folks. That's all they know. This is what the war of terror on you. They come right out and they tell you there's going to be there's going to be Islamic state-inspired attacks. They then come out and go after y'all in this religious seasons, whether they be pagan and solstice or Christian or those that are Islamic that believe in the side that believes in the Christian side and not the other one that says that they get to lop off everybody's head and marry 6-year-old girls, babies. See, there's a way to analyze that too, that's wrong, but that's the thing that they pop, and that's the thing that everyone sucks up in propaganda land in the United States. Security agencies warn terrorist threats against churches. See, they're hitting everywhere. And guess what? In every story, folks, that's every story shows that they admit they have no evidence. There's no credible evidence. Officials say there are no known credible threats and that the bulletin was issued out of an abundance of caution given the public nature of the threats issued by the group's followers. I thought they said there was no credible threats. Well, what are they talking here? What doublespeak is this? This is a fascinating new abundance that we now get to suffer, folks. Did you ever think that abundance would be this? You see how they take the language and use it against us. This is now an abundance of deceit and fraud upon you to keep you in that fear mode. Now, some of you may not believe this. What I'm saying is that it works on your mind. These people in this agency and in this government should not be allowed to do that. And we sit as crickets against it continuingly to do it. And to move back over a little bit, what else was not supported by any evidence that they keep pressing, the agenda they keep pressing? for whatever needs. I don't need to see it. I just know that they're doing it. That's all I really need to know, is that they're doing it and it's a lie. And they're in a position in this country, if you believe that we were supposed to have law over the top of every action, you should not be agreeable with this and not just chat your disagreement, but actually start to understand what it's going to take to start to work against this thing. In anything that we hear anymore, it seems that there's any support, the same as Intel analysis shows Putin-approved election hacking. Another story in this lineage of stories that there's no proof offered, no evidence ever. And I think that's going to be our ability, again, the anticipation of where this all takes us, how they drag us by the nose as a society to identify immediately where's the evidence, and if you don't have it, why aren't you in jail? Why, if you're in a position of an employee, why aren't you out of your work and then in jail? And we can complain all we want until we start focusing our attention on certain points and putting pressure. See, I don't know if people appreciate how this actually seems to work. And I say actually and then seems, okay? That's a little bit of a conundrum. Actually seems is that why it seems like it works is because it does follow through a resolution through a certain pattern. And that's the actual part. And I haven't seen otherwise, so I'm going to have to do this fancy footwork actually seems. That this works on us and we don't stop it. They get to do more of this working on us and we won't stop it. It's a bad snowball rolling. We need to be able to stop this and say, not just stop, but actually work to have it stop. There's no way that this is going to stop on its own. I offer you a fairly technical assertion that when this government, the people in government, see, I think the government is pretty inert. It's just a framework. And there was supposed to be some checks and balances that are gone. And I identified for you in 2012, I think it was, and then 2013 and 2014 with NDAA, that you heard by the memo they had gone extrajudicial. I said, your country is over. Your country ceased to exist. The executive has denounced the remedy. And we needed the three parts. And I don't know if people appreciated that how this works. That you live in a country that imposed upon y'all exactions of every kind and no other. I talk to you about it all the time. I'll mention it again. Section, for those of you who haven't heard this, and those of you who have, go read it again. I can't imagine that you can't be intrigued by reading this over and over and getting the chills that it should stand down your spine. Title 42, Section 1981. You are all treated equally. Every one of you are treated equally to the payment of exactions of every kind. With the caveat to you, as I keep telling you, except to the extent that you can assert it's not to be put on you. In other words, you only have the rights you assert against this oppression. This was done in Lincoln's time, for those of you who think it was just done since Obama or whatever. It's been done a long time ago, and it falls on the heels, it was the execution on the heels of international oppression on the world. Now, a little bit of which comes out in a video I'm going to hopefully get to, that was passed on through the chat of UCY through to me. Got to see it, long video, but it's pretty much one of the possibilities and probabilities of what we're living under all the way back, folks, to 1,000 or 6. I mean, at the time of Christ, I can go. It's actually a couple centuries before that. In this iteration, it goes before that, actually. But at any rate, Putin is blamed with no evidence. Terrorist attacks with literally zero evidence to tell us, and yet they'll spout it off. It is a crime against you. You are paying exactions of every kind on a case-by-case basis, which is whatever rights you think you can assert against the oppression is what protects you to the limit, how much you're going to pay. Why people look out in the world and see the courts and how the cops, and they say, well, this guy got treated different than that. Has nothing to do with any of the things they tell you that are underneath the rules of protection for prejudice. What, the color, creed, color, national origin, all that stuff, that's a facade. That's to divide you out. You're treated equally under the exactions of every kind up to what you can assert back that says, no, that was an excess to the exact right you have to put on me. That's why you see differentiating cases, differentiating outcomes. It has nothing to do with your race, creed, color, and any of that stuff. It has to do with you're all sitting underneath a servitude and exaction of every kind. That's your equal rights. And if you got treated different and you thought it was worse, you just didn't know enough to defend you in the right way, defend yourself against in your own right way, because it's on a case-by-case basis. People don't understand what I've been telling them all this time, how important it is to understand what I've been saying. So your issue isn't one of race, creed, color, and all this other stuff that you're being violated. It's that there's an oppressor that keeps putting on you an exaction, an extortion of every kind, and there's no remedy for that. And we're crickets to that part. And I've been giving you for years some of the antidote, I bet. We've laid the foundation of where one of the main perpetrators of this oppression and extortion are against all people, folks. And if you go read Title 42, Section 1981, the white privilege was that they were imposed with this exaction before the other colored people. And the colored people are those colored by the law. So we are sitting in a position of servitude always to the oppressor, and we haven't figured that out with all of our flag waving and all of our peace on earth and all of our other kumbaya. That people that would listen to me, oh, well, he's a smart guy, yeah, but I don't quite think he's got it. I don't think I need to do that. It doesn't matter. I know whatever all y'all say. I watch it, but I just don't even want to keep tabs of it. It's nonsense. It's nonsense against my experience. It's nonsense against my diligent study. It hurts me to see it, and then it hurts me again because I know that means we're not going to make it. And yet I have a hope that we will. If we don't come beyond this and understand the actual condition they have us under, we're going to be fighting ourselves. We'll have arguments, incessant arguments, meaning nothing forever. You think I'm doing it to you, so you fight me instead of fighting the guy that put the oppression on both of us. I say guy, that's the common street language, guy. We almost saw a woman be the president that was going to be a continuation of a worse problem in a different direction that's going to be covered over in a different direction than the one that got in. So the point is that you're under law, so-called, the statutes, you are an oppressed victim. And you want to fight me? I'm suffering the same thing. You want to fight me over your victimhood? That doesn't make much sense. I'm sitting here to tell you that, and then you fight me on that. Why? Because I guess it's easier to fight me and deny the fact that we're both victims. It's no joke when we're talking about this. Gets us back to the Wounded Knee. This gets us back to Russell Means. Y'all live on a reservation. Never met the man. Never talked to him. I couldn't have wanted to shake his hand and just look in his eyes and more than when he come out with that and say, man, you got it. This is us. We are in some serious trouble. Sadly, that experience and that voice is gone from us. We have the oppressors that are causing the condition that cause the war of terror on you. And we tend to be, as crickets to that, crickets to this, and we tend to start fighting amongst ourselves or be fearful amongst ourselves instead of saying, wait a minute now, these guys are lying to us to get us to feel this way against each other. You want peace on earth, folks, stop fighting amongst yourselves and stop letting someone goad you into fighting with somebody or fearful of somebody. Doesn't say the threat's not out there. I've told you over and over, we are not cool people. I'm disappointed in us, but that's okay. It doesn't matter what my sense is. The fact is the fact. So we have a lot of work to do in us, first of all. But when you start saying my words and this and my opinions are working to harm you, when in fact my response is, I was telling you before this when Trump popularly was voted, so-called, that you saw the oppression, the ones that were most oppressed under the last couple regime conditions, they spoke out immediately like there was a savior in their camp. That is our problem. We're still doing that to us and didn't look at the one that did the oppressing. So if we look close enough, the notice to us is that the oppressors are everywhere, doing their dastardly to keep up the oppression and keep up the war of fear on you, the war of terror on you. Remember, the actual definition, not the statutory definition of terrorism, but actual definition of terrorism is a system of government that rules by fear, intimidation, and dread. Fear, intimidation, and dread is terrorism. These are simple definitions. The government that does this is a terrorist, notwithstanding its statement contrary. And so we listen very carefully, whether you believe in Syria or not, the Russian help or not, or the American way, make America great, booyah, USA, USA, USA. You have to listen to the notice we're being given and then filter through the news. It may be fake, right? Notice being given by foreign people that are looking at their being attacked and resolving that in themselves, despite the nastiness that comes against them. That the Syria ambassador reveals names of alleged Western Saudi GCC intelligence agents trapped in East Aleppo. Well, I can go through an analysis, so we all have a thought about this, and I could read the article. The point is, the Syrian ambassador, the besieged country, besieged by paid foreign mercenaries of these same Western Saudi GCC intelligence agents. Notice the Mossad in the room is missing here from that list. They're saying that there's foreign intelligence agencies from other countries in their country. Is the extended proof that you live in a government that doesn't care that puts terror in your world, proved by the FBI warnings and the other warnings that there is going to be some inspired terror action, and they have no credible threat to point to. Is the Syrian statement by the ambassador of the Western help, the mercenary paid to go destroy those people in their country and get all into their Christmas packages and their ability to gift and give and be peaceful amongst themselves? Is the notice to you, the mirror of the Middle East, is the reflection in the United States that this is how they're working against us? Everywhere you can look, and you can get kind of paranoid about this. I try not to. I just look and see who they do and what they do, how they do it. I gang them up in their own actions together. I go ahead and I do that for a reason, efficiency and protection. I'd rather think worse of something that can attack me than to underestimate what they can do and attack. That you live infiltrated and surrounded. You live as if you are living in East Aleppo. You just don't see with your eyes the destruction. That the government of the United States of America, in all of its facets, in all of its NGOs, and all of the things that's going on, the media, all that stuff, is infiltrating and surrounded your life. And if you don't understand, you can talk about it, but you don't understand how that works against you and then how to work against that. You're missing it. You're going to miss it. You're not going to be fulfilling what I think we're all here today, if I get a little esoteric, what we're here for today. The Syrian ambassador reveals the names of Western intelligence agents in East Aleppo. You think that's why maybe they wanted a truce over there all the time? United States, Carrie the ketchup queen, because that's her wife. His wife is the one who has the business that hunts ketchup, right? His opinions mean something here. Is that they wanted a ceasefire so they can continue to feed the beast inside of East Aleppo, or work to extract these intelligence agents so they couldn't be found? To hide that they are the committers of the terror in the world. And I hear people going into season's greetings. Now, part of me says, go and do that. The other part is, where are you when it's over? Those that are professing to be fighting terror are the ones that perpetrate it. Again, and you get this link, a Twitter link from a name M. Green, NATO Stock, nerve agent pre-treatment tablets found by the Syrian army in liberated al-Sakari, eastern Aleppo today. Then they also show, right before that in the list you'll get of pictures, the ambulance being used to haul the explosive powders around. They also found chemical weapons development labs in Aleppo. And you put 2 and 2 and 2 together and you get like 1. These aren't cool people. You come up with 1. They are utilizing chemical weapons. Syria was blamed for that, and in fact, the mercenaries paid by the West are doing it, and NATO supplied, they have the proof of the package, you'll see it. It's a picture, it's a video, exactly, you can go find a video too. That NATO supplies the nerve agent pretreatment tablets for chemistry that they have in their labs that were found in Aleppo by the Syrian army. The ones who are yelling, wolf, we have terror in the world, are the ones that are committing it. Peace on earth, folks. And for those of you that don't really engage or even start to begin to claw your way out of the stinking abyss, you're a part of that peace on earth that isn't. And when I say that, I'm sure my spirit just knows that a lot of people just want to leave what I'm saying. They don't want to engage this problem. I don't know what else to say but continue to do the truth I see. The truth that I experience. The war that I'm in that I don't like to be in, but I have to be in anyway, because if I don't, the invader wins. Why? Just 'cause. Just 'cause I didn't think enough and respect myself enough to step up and defend myself, even if I couldn't, actually. Not even smart enough to keep a rolled up newspaper around in my hip pocket, just in case some idiot wants to come and beat me up because he heard somewhere that I had another thought about than him, and he was so snowflaked out that he was all working on snow, he was all affected by snowflake that he had to attack me. Or you. This is all fomented so that we come against ourselves. In fact, nobody ever looks at the party who's actually doing the dirty deeds. I'm asking us to look better, anticipate the future better. It takes a little bit of work. And it's not just like, oh yeah, the government done it. Literally not everybody in government does do it. That's another experience. I tend to harp a little bit on the ones that are doing it wrong, but we find the people in the government are just ignorant of the truth of the matters. And what is our truth? Our truth is really, the government's obligated to these laws. That's our truth. We just state the black and white. See, this is not an opinionated what's truth. It's what's required, what's obligation and duty reality for these people. That they may be totally, and are, not maybe, a lot of them are completely clueless. They're completely clueless 2 years after we tell them how clueless they are. This is our own people being ignorant. I can't attack or judge anybody for that. I can just take a deep breath and then resituate my condition in explanation. And if I can't do it, I got to find someone else who can. And to tell you the truth, I'm not that guy that can do that a lot of times. Maybe that's my problem. Maybe that's my problem on this broadcast. I'm not the guy that can talk a lot slower and lay out the methodological reality that allows you to understand a lot quicker. Now, you'll never get the type of amount of information I'm saying, but the point is you might start to slowly understand a lot more succinctly. Maybe that's my failure. I'm not the guy to be doing this, even though I'm the guy with the knowledge. Or at least the knowledge that we use that works. I'm certainly not complete. I mean, there's a lot I don't know for sure. A lot. I'm not realizing what the phraseology I forgot more than you'll ever know. I'm starting to come to my time in my life. I'm starting to realize that. I'm starting to realize I forget a whole lot more than even I thought I knew. There's like a vast ocean of things I just can't recall. And I think I knew that going in. I think I could see that coming on. Why I started to relate. I adjusted my technique was to study, gain the principle, and then carry the principle forward that I trusted I studied correctly until given new information, so that I didn't have to be the photographic memory. I didn't have to know exactly where I found it. I just know the principles behind it, and I can go, with the internet it's been easier now to go back, but I don't have to remember these things word for word and show how brilliant I am because I have a photographic memory. I think photographic memory just happens to be you put so much information, you realize the importance, you don't want to forget it, and somehow you hold this stuff. But I realized it was just too much for me. When you start to do things, and the problem isn't the doing, it's when you try to do something and it's galled up by obstacles, that starts to grind me down. When you're dealing with the problems of a project instead of dealing with the project. And then you get a dozen of those projects and they all start to have their individual problems that you have to kind of hand walk each one of those. It becomes very grueling. That's kind of where we are right now. And it's because there's just not enough of you all stepping up with your part. I can just tell you, not to blame you, that's just the fact. If I, like I said, in a microcosm of the miners, the macrocosm we call America, if I had 1,000 miners that just read the law and understood what I'm saying, and we had some time to discuss how our differences might be and come to that, what that black and white really means, the miners would not be sitting in the problem they have. We have 1,000 people working in the right direction. I think this thing's over within a very short time. We don't do that there. No, we all fight amongst each other. We go do the wrong thing. We listen to the wrong people. Is what we do in society at large. The microcosm of the miner is what we see in America, United States of America, and society in general. And that means we don't have a foundation, and we have no responsibility, and itself we have no respect for ourselves either. So while they have you all fighting amongst yourself, and they do the terror threats, and your mind is thinking, and even if you dismiss the terror threat, they got you thinking about it. Using the holidays as a distraction, Obama just signed the NDAA propaganda provision to destroy free press. Now, I'm not necessarily believing that's the case, but let's just say it's going to go ahead and destroy free press. That you're going to have to you're going to have one day that prepare for the time that they're going to attack you and take away your so-called free press. And I've been giving you tools all this time on how to do that. The quick answer to me is that how can a court, you guys got to find it, the court case that allowed, I think, Fox News to lie, how can they allow the court case that allows Fox News to lie and called it news as a freedom of expression? How can they then deny you to lie and even create fake news? Seems to be a pretty compact, self-evident proof against the fact about destroying the free press. So this is either they did do this signature. They are using NDAA. Don't underestimate the necessity part of this. And don't underestimate that it's going to be tied and possibly tied to your indefinite detention as well with all your things. So this is not free of an attack. But if you don't understand that this is how they're coming at us, we'll be looking the wrong direction when it does come at us. And as I've told you before, I've looked and said, I'm beyond media behind Woodshed. I only use the news as notice of what the reality is we're up against and the non-reality that you can identify that you're also up against. So that's kind of an interest. To me, that's a funny. I mean, a lot of this stuff, part of me is laughing like crazy. Really. It's no joke, but I'm laughing about all the stupidity about what we do, what we know, and how little we actually can communicate that we're actually perceiving and don't use. And to me, that's a sad joke, so I laugh. A little snicker. Because the answers are right there in front of us. So while we're all enjoying each other, peace on earth, the NDAA was signed as a so-called propaganda provision, and there is a provision for this. But they already gave that to the government, to the press. They said that you can do propaganda now, didn't they? They relieved the law, they repealed the law that put the imposition for telling the truth. So this is not even new news. This is just the thing they do, and just look at when they did it to know these people in government don't mean you any good. There's a system setting up that's going to, from cradle to grave is the thing you can't forget here, folks. This is what this is all about. The technocratic religion is going to be ruling you through their digital god, and you're going to be cradle to grave. And this is now also reflected in the school to prison pipeline that you hear about. That also in the same time, when they're bringing on this NDA, they can lie to you. They can call it fake news, and that can be a lie, but that's good enough. And you can get lost in all that and waste a lot of time, and you can wonder about what's going on. You can wonder as if your media, what relation are you? Are you trying to be that guy or gal that comes up with the witty, insightful view on the news, which is probably fake anyway? Or you can start sitting back in reflection and saying, okay, where is this going, like I've been trying to do? Yeah, I don't mind being the guy that tries to come up with something that's a new insight. But anyway, I think my insights are completely unique at some level because I don't go by the news. I don't try to interpret too much. I just say, here it is, here's what they're doing, this likely is what it means, and this is how we should respond to that. In that point, it's a unique broadcast. I don't think there's anybody else that actually can do that and has done that. If there is, I'd like to maybe know. I want to listen to other people that are along this line. That I'm not worried about being media. I'm concerned that we understand what we're being fed as media. My independence is self-proclaimed by what I do and don't do, and that's not to engage and embrace this media so much. In fact, I'm reading from websites that I'm not fully happy with as far as the truth side or the knowledgeable side. Even not truth. It's just people think they know something. It's as I told you a few weeks ago, the broadcast of the things you know that ain't so. And I am vulnerable to that myself, notwithstanding my action independence here. They're non-dependents again. Thank you, Solomon. They're non-dependents. I'm not dependent on these folks. I could talk to you from what we're doing, but then that would expose what we're doing and set us up to a fall because they would anticipate how we're hitting them. So I use this instead. But I'm using sources that I'm not so happy with, but that's the part of the point. We're given truths and we're given lies. You're going to have to really work on who is knowledgeable enough to actually speak to this. I've been pointing out a lot in these so-called anti-media sites. They don't even know what they're talking about. But there's truth. School-to-prison pipeline complete. New law makes schoolyard fights a felony. This is what your government in terror is doing. They needed to make you all criminals, and they're doing it right in the beginning. We knew the school-to-prison pipeline was set up. They set you up for the fall. This is the method. They set you up for the fall, and you don't know. You don't have a clue. Certainly not as the little one. You don't have a clue. But now your natural response to someone attacking you could be that you're a felon. And you know the way this works. The attacker doesn't get charged. You do. The one in defense does. And boy, I didn't get in lots of fights, but I was always under pressure because I was always small when I was in school. And that kind of, not that I got real large, but I got normal size when I got out of school, actually. It took me all that time. I was a late bloomer. But I was a little guy, and I got picked on quite a bit, but, that didn't stop me from defending myself. And I didn't get in lots of fights. In fact, because of the way my posturing, I guess, despite my size, I didn't get in a lot of fights. And those few that I did, I've been a felon probably 4 or 5 times over. And after every one of those fights, I was friends with the guy that was attacking me. And interestingly, I never really got hurt myself. But they recognized I wasn't going to put up with it. I would be a felon. I think it's 5. I can't try to remember all those little things that goes on when you're a kid. Pretty amazing what we do to ourselves even as little kids. I'd be a felon 5 times over with this rule. This is what they're doing to you. And it was a natural interaction consequence, learning about yourself. Learning about having to deal with others in reality, not snowflake land. Not social justice warriors that wouldn't know how to be a warrior one, and aren't. Well, they're a warrior, but they're a warrior for a downfall. They're warring for the slide into the stinking abyss nice and comfortably. School-to-prison pipeline complete. New law makes schoolyard fights a felony. Do I have to? I'm just reading the title. I don't even want to read the article. You can read the article if you're if you don't find this information staggering and need to know more. I don't know about you. You've got to know somebody you'll find out this day. You could go get to the blogcaster, go find it yourself. You go read where this is going on. You have people there. If you don't tell those people in that state to get their kids out of school right now, you're not helping. You're hurting. If some of you don't gather up and make a blitz campaign to stop that nonsense, you're hurting. I shouldn't have to come up with these ideas. You hear about this. There's an alarm should be ringing. This is what the Patriot Act, what we call Patriot. It's not, but that's what we call it because it's nice and fun. It's warm and fuzzy. That's what it started, was this. Remember, they made misdemeanors underneath that law causes you to be an enemy combatant. They've now extended the fighting to little ones, and it's a felony. You don't think they're after your rights and lots of your voting rights in some states, your right to bear arms, your right to defense, self-defense, from cradle to grave? Here it comes. It's astonishing to me your so-called representatives would actually come to this to be able to get it through, and no one says anything. And I need to say where it is because I always like the name. It's fun for me. In fact, it was the home of the late William Roberts, Missouri. It's in the state of Missouri. Well, you're going to see it, folks. You're a felon for getting into a fight at school. I mean, just think about it. Maybe some of you girls weren't too much into that, but here, I don't know either. I wasn't really paying attention too much. I was always watching out for my own self. But how many girls got in fights, I don't really know. There's a few. But real hair pullers, right? You'd be a felon. How many guys haven't been in fights in school? You'd be a felon. In misery. I start to get beside myself. The seething starts to. I feel it. I don't know if I could articulate it, but there it is. I can just. I want to grab my hands around someone's neck, whoever, and choke them. See, it just starts to come out. I just get all balled up with it, and I hear crickets on this stuff. Is worse. That's us agreeing. Oh, no, we have a jury. Oh, yeah, right. You're going to have a jury. Youth court, family court. Yeah, you don't have it that much. That's not there. And if they think they're going to do that, is the jury any smarter? No. Well, it is smart. See, it's those seditious types. They didn't understand they've been duped too. Why? Why do we know that? Because the pool is from the commerce side of your so-called jury through your IDs and driver's license. They're pulled and pulled from a commercial registry, not your we the people registry, not your peers. Your peers are commercial entities, and they don't even know that. This is a commercial crime. You don't even know that, partly because you're engaged with the school itself, which is part of the corporate crime. It's part of the corporate criminal conspiracy against you. You don't understand that. How do I know that? 26 states at least outwardly agreed to the Model Business Corporation Act being enacted in their state that substituted the permanent laws of the people for a corporation code. All of y'all will parrot that, but you won't research out to find it for yourself and then find the bills and laws that tie it together so it's beyond opinion. I've already done it behind the woodshed if you listened over my broadcasts. We even went on to the Bar Association, and I pointed out right in their own statements they talk about this very thing, even till today. But they're making your little ones felons for things that naturally happen with the interaction of people. Because we're not angels. The little angels are not angels. And anybody at the toddler level that's had been around a toddler knows that's where it changes. They go from tiny to terror in just like overnight. And then they get fast. And now that progression is going to be felony. And I want to remind you, this way this works ends up being, I blame you for doing it. That's all I need, and that's all they need to put your little one in this felony status. And then don't forget, you have to deal with that. You'll have to go through the what they call a kangaroo court, the crime that the justice system that will put you through and drag you through to pull you a bit of money and property out of you that it can over your life. How parasitically genius this thing is just exactions of every kind. Exactions of every. You don't understand what you're talking. You don't even know who's after you. You think it's me. You think I'm talking about you. You think I have something about your color or how you think or how you wipe yourself. What? I'm going to blame you. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing, like talking about the Dapple Indian. I have nothing, no animosity, no thought, no any in my mind about the Indians. I wish they would do a whole lot better so we all do better. Because we're all on the reservation. I can't stress this thing enough. I've been proving it to you year in and year out. Prison to pipeline. Can you even imagine? I'm stuck here. I'm going to move on, but I've been stuck. I've been stuck right here. I was going to talk a little bit more, but I am looking at this title and I am stuck. Do you understand, folks? Have I bored you in harping upon the fact that your little ones for getting in an altercation in misery is going to be a felony? And you'll all say, oh, that's terrible, this and that. Folks, it's beyond your saying. You have to work on getting people together to denounce this and get it repealed. It's ridiculous. I'll move on, but not so far. Again, thank you. And I understand this came through the UCY chat and then through to me to an email, markonthebeach@yahoo.com. Someone said there was a good amount of information on this video. It was very long, and it was 4 hours and 25 minutes, but it's called The Power Principle. It's a full documentary, and it touches all the things I've just talked about, why I'm bringing it up now. It touches in this video documentary about how you've been duped, who you've been duped by, how they go about doing it, what they do to do it, how they get you set up to do it to you. Very interesting, very, to me, some of it was just like, well, this is saying what I've been saying in different words. It gives you, and this documentary, as I look down, it was done in 2013, so it's been around. For those of you that have heard it, I apologize. Maybe you should revisit it, and you'll see this condition that I was just talking about in the beginning of the first hour of the broadcast. In this Power Principle documentary, you will also listen very carefully. There is a whole other thing, like the Mossad in the room that roared that no one really talks about. There's an underlying theme in this movie. If you understand a little bit about the history and tie together how the authorities went through to cause and allow these things to happen, there's a whole underlying study that can be done that I was able to go to really quickly. I reconveyed that to the emailer and said, here's some, I'll get you in a direction. Here's some papal bulls that speak right to how this is, and they're actually implementing this thing here in this movie that's not spoken about. Okay, so there's a whole lot in this little, and I thank you for to get to this documentary. I didn't know about it, but I think it's very important. I spent the time to listen to it. As I started listening to it, I didn't know if I could devote the time, but the information, it's not really all that new, actually, but it is a concise type of discussion, which is important. My only, and not to dismiss this, but I didn't understand why it wasn't more chronological in its presentation. That caused me a little bit of trouble. I had to get a little past that. Okay, put things in order chronologically. I think that's very important. So the documentary kind of breaks that up a little bit. For myself, I said, get over it. You're going to have to, stop the video, start thinking about what why did they do it, but more importantly, shift over what they're doing in the chronology to put that back in order in your mind and now continue to watch. That's what I had to do for myself to show you that, that's what I had to do. I don't know if you'll have to do that. Maybe it's more easy for you to do, but, and take that. But by doing that, I was able to establish a couple of different researching capacities. Okay, so I guess those are just some tips as I saw it. I don't want to say too much more about it. You'll find what you will find. And but to me, there was a whole unspoken message that I can relate to things that were way prior to the things talked about in the video and not even spoken to it, that are this condition that is the power principle, and where this thing, some of this may be coming for. It relates all the way up to today, folks. All this stuff is all integrated. What they're doing to us, the war of terror against us, how they do it, those that do it, how they lie, the fake news, it's been going on forever. It's not an issue. This is just what they're doing. So we can get lost in that, which is not an issue, and we can talk about and argue amongst ourselves. They're doing it to all of us equally, and they're winning. They get what they want. What do you want? If you don't even really know that, and you're not willing to fight for it, they get what they want. Maybe that's what I'll title if I remember, I'll title the broadcast. They get what they want. It's not you, see. I don't know what to say. I wonder. There's a truth there that is bigger than I can even fathom with respect to that video documentary. But that's the fact. I don't necessarily like it. I don't like being played or duped, or I don't like being not being played or duped. But if they find you out, they kill you, and they hunt you down. And you're seeing some of that in the world today. I mean, this is not, everyone knows this. There's something about getting that put right in your face and then having the intention to stop it. That's really sobering. It's not really sobering more even than it really straightens up your mind about how dire the thing is, how capable these people are, and that your game has to be top notch. Absolutely top notch. And I bring some of the techniques that we use and that can be used to bring your game to that level, but without a purpose, without finding out what do you want. It matters not. They will get what they want. That there is no doubt in my mind. In this little documentary goes on about how that works against you. So I guess that comes down to the cricket question, doesn't it? Do you know what you want, and will you fight for it because you have to? Or do you let them come with what they want and take what you thought you wanted or what you thought you had? This is the cricket. If you don't respond, you're just as a comfortable cricket in the forest in the summer. And I'm talking about, that's a literal response, but that's also what we use the idea of the cricket for, which is the non-response, right? It's a non-response. And I don't know why we would sit here and watch a law come in to felonize a little one. When you look at the principle, the power principle, they go after the youth to bring them into the next iteration of the oppression. And are you okay with that? And if you're not, then what are you literally doing to stop it? If you're not listening to me, then and you've made your decision, then that's fine. I mean, then you're doing something. I had nothing relevant. I have a hard time believing I have nothing relevant, and I also have a hard time believing that our camaraderie, given that we're underneath the same thing, which would empower us, that doesn't happen, is an interesting thing to me as well. That we don't see much reflection on these points and understanding tells me that societally we're crickets. We're going to remain crickets, and it won't matter what we want, even if we did want something, because we're not doing anything to stop those that have a contrary view about what they want. Remember, the future they want. I've said it, 2030. I've read it all. I've read all this stuff. This is not even a question. How can this be a question? They get what they want. They have the future they want. The 2030, they tell us what they want, and it's no good for you. This felonization of little ones is part of that. The sustainable debt. What's the worst debt that you can have than money, finances, than the debt you have to pay to society because of your wrongness, your mischaracterization of an act. You realize they've taken intent completely out of this. They've taken knowledge completely out. I told you they were after little ones a long time ago. They were breaking down this capacity barrier that sits in the law against men and women. And when they finally breached the dam of that, and finally got to the point that saying that a person is not living, it's the undead creation fiction. It has no gender. It actually has no age. And the fiction is that they ask you about your age, how long you've been existing, as if that matters actually. But if it mattered, the capacity, if age mattered on the fiction, then most corporations under 18 years of age in existence since born could not have capacity to engage, but they give them that license. That might be another crime against capacity. But the point is that capacity is not relevant anyway, and you're seeing that a person, you better not respect a person, because that's what we're told. The God's not respecter of a person, and yet the state is, but only the way it forms it. And so capacity is irrelevant, and they're showing you that they're treating your little ones as a legal fiction, because capacity, their ability to know and intend, which used to be held up at around 18, your capacity to make a contract, is now eliminated. Along with that will come a whole bunch of other horrendous things, as you see now. What makes the news, and we start talking about whether or not, whatever it means or not, is still in the thing, is the pedophilia thing, pedophilia matter that I've talked to you about a long time ago. This is not even really news. Again, it's not news. They're giving us notice of the future, and they get it if we don't resist it. And so they start reducing this age, and all of a sudden you heard the Vatican come out and say, well, age, when you're so young, they even got it down below a certain age. Now you don't, and even a baby, they don't have a sense of sexuality, so you can't harm them. See, these psychopaths will rationalize anything. Criminals will rationalize anything. And we continue to be crickets against it, and what I've just told you has been over a decade old, at least, their actual statement about that. And yet we continue to listen to the same Pope that the predecessor officers in sin have made papal bulls that will destroy you and seek to destroy you. And when you read some of the papal bulls about what was given to people to go do to other people, there's not much different than the Jesuit oath. In sense, in context, they don't say it the same way, but they end up being the same way. When they put you into permanent slavery, they state right in there. We should have a problem with that. So one of the things that they do is this financial destruction. They do sustainable debt. They do these things that they build fiat systems, which are not necessarily in themselves wrong, but they're easily manipulated, and you see how that works. You're seeing what happens in these. We're told in the Constitution to have weight and measure. That pretty well should focuses on, if we're in the law, focuses on things of substance and some things of durability and things of actual value, as weight and measure can hold the standard, not the power of an electron. Now, I don't know about any of you who have a flux capacitor that somehow keeps the universe running on all its energy needs, but I know that someone cutting a power supply can get rid of that electron pretty easily. In fact, there's forces in this world that can blow this government, the government of the world, this world all up to nothing, and we wouldn't have a little bit to say about it. So we work, the cute little monkeys that we are, we try to work against this oppression instead of going after the oppression. We work with little tools that try to evade or avoid. Probably avoid is better, right? Evading is a crime, but this is something that wasn't at all. This thing called Bitcoin. Again, it's in the digital world. It's in Silent Weapons, Quiet Wars. I'm not sold on it. I think it's neat. Absolutely think it's neat. Maybe I should have embraced it a little bit just to be able to have a pass-through for now, now that it's more acceptable, that maybe there could be some donations coming my way. But I opted not to be into that system much at all. Didn't want to have the hooks in me. So I've known about this thing a long, long time ago. That the system of oppression needs to deal with these things, these inventions. No different than they had to deal with the miners, creating their own mining districts to be law for themselves, even if they were outlaw to the outer world. Bitcoin, not money, Miami judge rules in dismissing laundering charges. And I'm going to suggest that you be very careful on how you determine. This is in flux. But this Bitcoin is not money is an interesting statement on the cover of it. And it would require a pretty deep analysis to start to understand really what are they talking about. But just from the title, Bitcoin is not money would be the truth, right? So I don't take a judge to know that, because money is weight and measure. Bitcoin is not weight and measure. It's not determined gold or silver coin. Correct? So of course it's not money. But this judge is sitting in a what? He's sitting in a corporate capacity, correct? He really can't speak to money anyway. But what we're seeing here underlying this story, I'll just read the first paragraph. A Miami-Dade judge ruled Monday that Bitcoin, this is an old story as well, but Bitcoin is not actually money, a decision hailed by proponents of virtual currency that has become popular across the world. Well, it's not money. It's also not fiat currency. So we have all these terms. It is a medium of exchange agreed to privately by a bunch of people. And this becomes one of its attractions. It's really a private contract. And I haven't really analyzed a lot of this. I just make that comment because those of you that are going to try and protect yourselves are going to need to know a thing or two, given you might be dealing in that, because the next story coming out is a little bit more imposing, despite the fact that a Miami-Dade judge declares that Bitcoin's not money. Of course it's not. It is something, it's a medium of exchange, so don't get those two mixed up, and it's also not a fiat currency. It doesn't mean, however, that it doesn't convey value that you were subject to declare because of a couple of actions you didn't take or a couple of things that you don't know how to respond to by the tax man. And so while it's not money, the IRS takes its value because it's not perceived that there's any value that didn't come from a fiat system. The miner working the ground of which, the farmer, the producer of which can destroy this argument in a heartbeat. Because that comes from the multiplication of the earth and the extraction by labor and life. By livelihood for life. The labor is something they control, right? That's your employer relationship, your slavery relationship. The same slavery that you're put into, that the Papal Bulls say you're going to be put in permanent slavery. This is all consistent. But you'll fight me and argue with me about the color. I'm talking about color of your skin or your whatever. I don't even like going through the list. The list of the division of lists. It gives you all these places to harbor your snowflakeness and forget that they are putting that on you to use as a division. When in fact we're all being treated equal in a different fashion, but for the same reasons. If you're not into Bitcoin, that's fine. Just know the IRS wants it gone for nefarious reasons. The point is that on this story and some other thing, I mean, you can go through and read this. I could do the analysis. I don't know why I should have to. I want to point you out because these are decisions that we have to make that can get involved, and how these things are there to tell us about where the traps might be that we may want to think better ahead of it and make the better decision. Imagine you found out that the IRS has just issued summons for every financial transaction by every customer of your bank for the last 2 years just to see if they had maybe committed some form of tax fraud, and the federal judge had approved the request. Last week, that is exactly what happened to the Bitcoin exchange Coinbase. Under the guise of ferreting out of people committing tax fraud, the IRS, via the DOJ, filed a John Doe summons requesting every financial transaction that has occurred on Coinbase between 2013 and 2015. And so a company, or at least said so, an internet entity, I don't know if they're LLC, I don't know how they're established or where, but was served a summons, and the judge allowed the summons to prevent the financial statements. Now, there's a whole lot that I don't understand about this that maybe Coinbase didn't know to say. How are they where did they have their due process, the meeting that's required under the tax code, that determined them a person liable to the tax, or that they were subject to the IRS, or that someone that they had was particularly known to be someone that the IRS had jurisdiction over? I don't know how they're answering. These are the thoughts and questions that come to my mind in avoidance of that summons. So apparently they didn't respond in any of those. If they did, the judge disregarded. But if the judge was disregarded, then maybe that judge is inside the system that Coinbase is also in. So there's lots of questions on the jurisdictional part that I don't know, that I tell you that you need to do to give your first instance. The point is, they're coming after Coinbase even though it's not determined to be money. Now, maybe money is not what's taxable. And so when you don't have something that's identified as money, then it can be apparently attached. Now, if we don't understand this dynamic, we're going to get ourselves into problems like maybe and on a different point. I don't want to get into a contention over this. It's just the fact that the resolve of this was wrong to the party who did it, and that became a wound, and that was probably not right. But you go into the tax laws and you argue a certain section of law, and you get found that tax section of tax law is not applicable, and then you go down for the felony. In a system that was set up and you didn't understand to go and say, wait a minute, I didn't get my due process that determined me the person liable to keep records and make books. Keep records and make books is what happened in 1953 in all these states that adopted the Model Business Corporation Act. Before that, states, so-called, didn't have to keep records and make books. But that was the 1939 change in the tax law that was happening the 1954 change that happened from the 1939 tax law. That now the corporation shall make records and keep books. And now states have to make records and keep books. Now, why don't you think that's not a corporation? That's a taxable entity. The tax codes of which say that entity is actually exempt, but it needs to keep records and make books in order to keep track. And now we get to CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the other entity in the room that people don't pay attention to, while we support Ron Paul and Rand Paul about audits. That's it, folks. I mean, understand what we do. We do all the wrong things, it seems. That Coinbase, being a Bitcoin, is under scrutiny. What the bottom line here is that they convey value, and the taxpayer, the one that's deemed underneath their the order that says that you are a person liable to through this activity to make records and books to be kept here at this home, your tax home, and this person is to do that. That's what they determine in this, that no one understands it. The law requires all this, and no one questions it. Where is that? Where was my meeting? Where's my due process? That these people are now subject because these people are now taxpayers, and wherever they do a financially plausible financial engagement or transaction is reviewable by the IRS. It's probably why the judge said what he did. And there was no correct avoidances done here to stop that. So I don't know what to say about that. That's also something outside of my knowledge. I just see some of these failures are being very, very consistent. Like, but I didn't mention the name. Talking about using the rule in the code was Larkin Rose. He went through this machine, this grinding machine. He tried to use a section of law. I've told you how to use a section of law by not arguing it's not applicable. How do you use that and not first claim that it's not applicable and then don't have to use it? Is really an anomaly in my mind. When the rules say that you're supposed to be someone who's determined to be a person liable, and your first response is, where was the due process required hearing that determined me a person liable? What was the activity that the commissioner had a probable cause to believe was taxable for investigation in the first instance? Does anybody understand what I'm saying is there to read, to understand that it has to be done? Does anybody listening to me know that? I've said pieces and parts of it before. That's probably the more consistent statement I've made in a long time about this. And if I talk about jurisdictional challenges, why wouldn't that be considered the jurisdictional challenge up front that you need to make that no one I hear makes? That was probably not made in this if they could get around it. That be careful when someone says that Bitcoin is not money, that it's also not still liable to the scrutiny of the IRS, and that now you see the danger that the Bitcoin is actually just a register of transactions, that is not so actually anonymous, which I've been talking about for a long time. It's just another medium of exchange. I think it's a digital medium of exchange in a digital world. That's a great thing. But there is going to be these attachments and hooks. The digital world is digitally accessible by the government that created it, if you haven't figured that one out as well. And the government that created it did it for what? Not your goods. It was for their good. It's national security, and in my understanding of its initiation was through a warfare agency for technology. And so that's why you can't it's all public. That's why nothing's private. I've talked about this before. So this digital world is government created, and it's really looks like if you didn't live in a militarized world to begin with, this kind of proves out that you would be, given it has origins in the military, that it's not public. There's nothing you can make private about it. Well, you can try and encrypt and all that, and that's all lawful. You can do that. You have this right to not associate, but necessity will allow them to put the plug-in, the head-in switches in. And so you think, okay, well, we got digital protections and all this. Well, folks, if you keep finding out things, if you think these people will give up and getting your stuff, here's a story that should kind of knock that out of your head. A UK cops beat phone encryption by mugging the suspect after he unlocked his phone. So the upshot of this story was that somebody who was somewhat savvy on the fact that he wanted to keep his things encrypted and protected and safe. And the government had been apparently checking him out long enough to know that they had to set him up to, and they quote mugging in quotes. I think it's a mugging anyway. We got the quotes. But when he turned on his phone on the street and entered into his phone and bypassed his own encryption, they tackled him and took his phone while it was still on. And then an officer had to continually swipe the phone in order to keep it running so that they could then copy the content of the phone and keep so that it didn't deactivate under his encryption. That if they can't get at you digitally, they just come and mug you for it. Word to the wise, I guess, more than anything else. This guy didn't get away with it. They said they actually convicted this guy on the information that was on his phone eventually, and they said it was without it they couldn't get the conviction. So the thing that you've attached, these phones that you've attached to are the incriminating evidence that has no protection underneath the First Amendment or the Fifth or in law. It's really kind of sitting in commerce and contraband at the time that anybody points their finger and says, "Oh, you're doing an unlawful act." No different than your little one in misery is going to be pointed out by some punk or some ill-meaning teacher, or just gets into a fight is going to be a felon. So you can do all your digital protections. You can be doing like this guy, and they'll still come and beat you up for it. Word to the wise. UK's Investigatory Powers Act allows the state to tell lies in court. We kind of know this, but this is in the UK, and I want you to pay attention to the Brexit thing and how the EU may be deciding different and contrary to UK, and UK is coming down with an iron glove on everybody and stealing all their stuff, which the EU is saying is not necessarily kosher. Okay, or legal or lawful, depending on who the body judge is actually deciding for, right? The little Mossad in the room here, everywhere. UK's Investigatory Powers Act allows the state to lie in court. They can do parallel constructions. They can lie about where they got the information. They can be a little less, not as we learned in the Kim.com case, a little short of actual candor on the point. They can go ahead and do all kinds of things in order to get enough information to you that doesn't have to suffer the scrutiny of law anymore. And they're doing this underneath this necessity of the war of terror. Because it's not, as we said, or as I showed you earlier, it's not the war on terror. These people are perpetrating it. The Western people have the intelligence agencies in Aleppo whining about the fact that Russia and Syria doesn't want to stop to root them out. They just want this intel, and they don't care how they get it. They'll commit crimes and atrocities against people. They'll murder people, millions, hundreds of thousands of people. Ruin your life for years before your government might be able to come and save you. Think about that. Think about that for all you people that you think the state's such the bad dude here. The state in Syria is actually coming back to free them back up so they could at least live a peaceful life. So they wouldn't be suffering underneath the mercenary imposition of other nations. Otherwise you become slaves to the new mercenary. And it doesn't sound like that life is such a grand life. In fact, if you look at the plan, it's to diminish you, remember? The whole thing is to diminish you forever. This analysis was done. They can lie. When they can lie, what is the truth? EU court delivers a blow to UK snoopers charter. Now, in Brexit, once that goes on in 2 or so years, all the things you see that the European Union would find unpalatable about snooping on people, the UK is already willing to do and will do because it will not be constrained. And now they're using that. Well, you shouldn't separate then because we offer you protection. That's all a lie anyway. But this is what you're seeing. The people that are actually moving this agenda along have the privilege, and they take the privilege to be worse than another group of people that are already bad. The system that they're walking into, this lack of remedy system, they want to purport as justice, just us. It's just for whatever they need. It's even unpalatable to the practitioners, as we're warned. Lawyers, new court software is so awful, it's getting people wrongly arrested. You go ahead and continue hoping for this and not stopping this digital world that we have. And this is your future. It's being told to us right here. Problematic Odyssey case manager software package is used nationwide. One of the first things you need to do now, you need to comment and find out whether or not their case manager is made by this problematic software. Now, this is centered around California. It's apparently terrible, terrible, terrible. Innocent people are being brought up and then being beat up by the cops. So any interaction with a cop, it could be deadly here. You have to understand this dynamic. Most pieces of software don't have the power to get someone arrested, but Tyler Technologies Odyssey Case Manager does. This is the case management software that runs on the computers of hundreds and perhaps even thousands of court clerks and judges in the county courthouses across the United States. Federal courts use an entirely different system. That's the PACER system. As we found out, we can't even get our own documents out of that PACER system, so I don't know what difference it is. They make records in there that are unlawful, and you can't change them, so I don't see the difference. But in this case, this gets you directly put in harm's way. Typically, when a judge makes a ruling, for example, issuing rescinding a warrant, those words said by a judge in a court are entered into Odyssey. That information is then relied upon by law enforcement officers to coordinate arrests and releases and to issue court summonses. Most other courts, even if they don't use Odyssey, use a similar software from another vendor. But just across the bay in San Francisco, one of Alameda County's deputy public defenders says that since the county switched from a decades-old computer system to Odyssey in August, dozens of defendants have been wrongly arrested or jailed. Others have been either forced or to register as sex offenders unnecessarily. Quote, I understand that with every piece of technology, bugs have to be worked out. But we're not talking about whether people are getting their paychecks on time. We're talking about people getting locked in cages. That's what jail is. It's taking a person and locking them in a cage. All right, so there's the problem. The system has gone, doesn't care to quality control anything. Now, I want you to hearken back when I told you about Chicago and going to a blockchain technology for titles. I told you and I warned you about the problem there. Now, think about your property, your landed property. Now, think of you as property in this system. When they do it wrong, it goes completely wrong, and you have no actual remedy. You go and read the story. They still can't figure out how to make this thing not do this, and they're having to do a lot of work around it. That affects your life, even if you're innocent. So wherever they can identify you by whatever means that they've created and they're fabricating their pea brain about how this all works, they're securing your life, making it safe, becomes the other threat in your life you never knew could hit you and affects you probably for the rest of your life. It certainly will affect you the rest of your life. There's nothing that I've done with the government at all that hasn't got me to here today that adversely affects my life. And none of it was actually in the law to be done. And so what we're looking at is not the system, it was actually the people in the system that are just organized thugs. And even their own people are telling us this is just organized thuggery. They treat you as an animal, stick you in a cage, and no one really thinks that's important enough. For all you all think that you have a right. I'm telling you exactly what this is right now. The reality is you live in a world where you pay exactions of every kind and no other. There's no other remedy out. You will pay exactions. This is one of them. You will suffer this. And you will suffer it until you become the squeaky wheel. It's why things change in this country. When enough people stand up to the occupier and threaten to overthrow that part in a proper way, their part get fixed a little bit better. That's why you see equality not working equally. Because some people stand up and they do it correctly. If you come to me and complain, you're barking up the wrong tree. So sad, I can't help you. I can't help you anyway. But you turn your attention, as I'm trying to explain to you all, to do it more formally, properly, because that's the communication style of the oppressor. That's how your ruler has determined it will accept a response from you. One of the things you get to do is organize up and say, this part of what you're doing is in excess of your right to do it. And they have two problems in. One is that they're pissing off the natives, number one. And number two is they then have the obligation and duty to not do that, where you can point to a prior right they didn't have a right to do that against. We do that all the time in the mining law. They try to put on these after 53 statutes, and we go back and say, but there's a granted property that the state itself granted in law 100 years before that you or not, this statute cannot overcome. And again, this now harkens back, I told you, it's a case-by-case basis based on the law you can assert in your defense. A grant is a monstrous defense. It's an offense, too. So we assert there was a grant that these occupiers and international provisions of law could not trespass. No different than they can't trespass your Mexican land grants, for those of you in land that know about those. Those were adopted by the United States when the United States took the land from Mexico, but whether they beat them down and warred against them or just got it by purchase or agreement or whatever, they had to honor the prior commitments under international law, and they do. For those of you that say that there's no law, that's not true. The current regime will try to destroy all that, but that means that those people are not asserting those land grants as an authority that the government employee cannot interfere with. And there's not enough of you all saying this in order to be the squeaky wheel in the right way. And I can just jump this back over to Dapple. Not only is their position wrong, how they approached it is wrong. And if they were to approach it right, I don't think they could prevail because they don't have apparently the evidence. But that they're not approaching it in the right way gives them no vehicle to present their case either. And so they're a noise, they're causing themselves harm and trouble, but they're not the squeaky wheel to change the condition that they exist in and have existed in because they haven't done it more correctly. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm saying that's the reality, folks. And if you aren't organizing up that way and doing more proper communication, I don't see the likelihood of any actual change. The system understands it's got no real actual threat. It doesn't care to throw a bunch of militarized police at you. That's just part. That's the cost of doing business for you folks. We're in a day we're seeing that the military consequences is there's nothing. The military has all the rights, and yet there's still some rights they don't have. And if you don't speak in that way, then you're probably not going to go very far. And if we don't start doing that, there is no peace on earth. That's just another tagline propaganda everywhere. Now, I may feel I want peace on earth, and I may love you to death and feel camaraderie and feel friendship and all that other stuff. It won't matter in the bigger picture. The oppression still happens to both of us. I can hate you. I can despise you, and the outcome's the same. It doesn't matter between us. What the future they want will prevail. And the Bar Association is part of that. And again, we laid the foundation in 2013. When people start realizing that, if they ever do, it's going to be, I think, a quantum leap into what's going on in this country. And we might stop things like the FBI warrantless collection of emails, which is upheld in a federal court. Remember, the federal court, USDC, has no jurisdiction unless it's a territory over which it can rule. Our court case was touching exactly upon that. The Ninth Circuit Appeals Court overviews those courts without competent jurisdiction. There's only two court of competent jurisdictions, and they're neither of USDC courts. They're DC-US courts. I said a whole lot real fast. I talked about this before. Those of you who want to go study it, go read through Title 28 USC, I think it's 88 to 131. You tell me where the two lawful Article 3 courts are, and then tell me every one of the ones that are territorial courts that don't have jurisdiction. And the decision for this FBI to rule over you sits in a territory that I don't understand. It's an ethereal territory. It's a fictional territory over which the FBI has jurisdiction, but they will physically come and beat you up over it. They will virtually take all your emails under warrantless collections. And if you don't understand, you keep saying, well, I have rights. No, you don't. In this world here, you don't. And they'll tell you exactly how they go about it. They use the FISA. That's the necessity problem. And so as long as we're crickets on all this, it continues. It gets worse. And your little ones become felons just for sneering at each other. It's how petty it is. Talk about snowflakes melting. You wait till you attach social justice to their fighting. Oh, I bet you didn't think about that one, did you? Okay, going on. Police secret cell phone surveillance tool can also block calls by the innocent. Now, here's the other side of the problem. Not only are they interfering with your stuff, they can interfere with how and things you need to do. Their need takes priority over your need. Innocent calls. The innocent get affected. That shouldn't be okay that that's going on. But here it is. It's no secret the state and law and local enforcement agencies have grown more militarized in the past decade with armored personnel carriers, drones, and robots. And the state's actually allowing this and legalizing this oppression and these tools of weapons against you. But one item in their arsenal has been kept largely out of public view, to the dismay of civil liberties advocates who say it is a use and virtually unregulated and largely untracked. Notice they said civil liberties and not civil rights. So that's an interesting little distinction. Nonetheless, it's the lawyers pushing it, so you're not going to get what you want anyway. This device is a suitcase. Again, these are the people of the system being dismayed by their own system. The device is a suitcase-sized surveillance tool, commonly known as Stingray, that mimics a cell phone tower, allowing authorities to track individual cell phones in real time. Here's to get to the bottom line of this. The problem is that these are synthetic, these are simulated website sites that they take your signal in and they won't pass them on. And so you want 911, you have to talk to somebody about taking their medicine. You need to call your little one, the felon in school that's just become a felon because someone said he got in a fight. And you go to call your school and this Stingray site intercepts your call. You can't get to your destination with your call. And you don't know that. And they don't have to tell you. That's enough I'll say on that. You got to understand that the government is now, if you didn't think it could affect your life because you're not doing anything wrong, no, they can definitely affect your life. And part of the other valueless thing that they put the word value on that they use in order to be able to do all this is police make value judgments about hate crimes and use it as an excuse to spy on everyone. Okay, let me get, my whole point on this was the term value judgments. Remember I talked about the stakeholder, stockholder, and the stalking horse, and the, what was that? The conservation type of expert. That all these entities, these things, these evil people, they have to drop their morals and ethics at the door and pick up the values of the agency that they now agree that they now work for as a slave. Employee relationship is a master-servant relationship. You have to drop your ethics and morals at the door, even if you're someone who's good, and you have to pick up the values of the organization that you agree with. And those are the value judgments that they're talking about here. These value judgments allow for fraud and deceit and crime against you. I've discussed all this in paperwork that I've read. I've read all this in past castas. Is that even a word? Anyway, value judgments have no value. They're actually the value of the judgment based on the policies of the organization the police work for. These value judgments are another stalking horse. They're a charade and a cover. And so when you walk into court with a value judgment of this police officer, and you all think, well, that was a good value judgment. No, it was under the considerations of the agency who's going to take away your rights underneath the exactions of every kind. And so this headline tells us they're not utilizing probable cause, are they? And so your whole system doesn't exist in law anyway. No matter how fictional it is, it doesn't exist in the law. Even if it was legitimate de jure, it's not basing its actions on anything based in probable cause. These are policy judgments. And you don't have an interest in that. How little you really have in this. And I don't know, again, it kind of strikes me. I don't know if you appreciate what I'm telling you here, how detrimental this is, how adverse this is, how deeply evil this is. It's not addressed by simple statements sometimes. You have to go through the dialogue about what is this value judgment. This value judgment is a system judgment that's imposed upon the one that's going to implement it because he's a servant, a slave to that system. Not you, not the public servant. That's the government servant. The public means government. The government servant, not yours. Stop going into your council meetings and thinking that board serves you. If you go look at the charter, it serves the state, The state's a fiction. The state's a corporation. How do I know that? 26 states had directly accepted the Model Business Corporation Act to supplant the permanent laws of the people of that state. Value judgments are underneath these Model Business Corporation Act policies. I've read all this stuff before. The point here is not that they're actually deciding hate crimes, which is kind of an oxymoron type word in my mind, but it doesn't matter. It's what they call it. They can call anything they want. And to spy on you, and they can get away with it, it's that they have no actual basis. Again, what did I say in the beginning of the broadcast? They bring no evidence of any credible threat whatsoever, ever. Did you get that? Ever meant by two definitional differences there? Ever. So, applied to context to two different things, right? So, value judgments. Every time you see that, that's a system word. It's system think. It's the value, not that you impose upon that party to do, not that your prejudice says, oh, cops are good or whatever, or not. It's the value of the system that is being implemented by that one who comes in the costume. Value judgments have no value. This is the doublespeak. It's no different than we found out the values, the aesthetics in natural resource law statutes have no value. Aesthetics have no value. Is that my opinion? Is that just a cause I move? No. The appraiser board that's used by the United States government for appraisal of land value, for when they do a takings or eminent domain or insurance or whatever, they had a big fight over this. I read that article behind the Woodshed, I don't even know how long ago. They don't values, aesthetics, one iota, $0. Aesthetic, subjective views have no value. So value judgments have no value. What they are is the policy implementation that may not be law. And these value judgment source comes from an adjunct policy consideration contrary to your law, as we sued in 2013. Like I said, our lawsuit's it's not very big, but it's quite encompassing, if people were to be interested. These people are pretty arrogant about this. It's coming down. You will be made publicized, even if you're an innocent. New York PD cops raid wrong home, posting photo of handcuffed family to Snapchat. Innocent people being violated, and now they're put on Snapchat as people that other people would presume to be guilty of something. You can't be innocent anymore, and then you will be used for whatever sick joke. This Neanderthal, that's 80 IQ minus cop, wants to think he's cute. Now, they did suspend the guy, or they moved him to non-active duty someplace. They put him on a desk or something. But you have to understand the mentality or lack of it that you're dealing with in these people in this time of peace on earth, goodwill toward men. You're being the truth and the realities slipping right past you. You see the harm and you complain about the harm, but instead of going after who's doing it in a substantive way, this cop's not even doing that. He's gotten the idea he could do that from the people who employ him underneath the ones that set the policy for the so-called value judgments that he's using. He's not even capable now to be able to do that on his own. This is not morals. This is not ethics. This is not passion and care. They've put any morals they had at the door when they took the job. How despicable can this condition be? And the one that accepts that and does it that way. That when we see ones that won't actually put their values and judgment at the door and they speak up from inside, they're vilified, kicked out, attacked, whatever goes on. And so I've told you that we're living underneath in a modified Libra code of sorts. I won't get into all that. You've heard it plenty of times. That I've said that the only way you are going to see any accountability is when the soldier, this officer, goes beyond and causes such an apparent violation that not even war can agree with, that you will see accountability. And so we have an evidence a little bit of that today, innocent people as well, at least innocent, they're not supposed to suffer death, even unless the jury says death penalty. So this is what I'm saying about the innocents. You're innocent short of any sentence, even if you were guilty. Precedent set. So they say a precedent has been set here. I'm not so sure, but it is an unusual outcome. Man found not guilty for shooting 3 cops during no-knock raid. Now, I want to be very careful to advise, be careful on how you understand this, and don't think you're going to go out and take this guy is very lucky. He happened to be in Texas, and they have a defend your castle thing. If you don't do this. This is just almost an outrageous condition. This guy was very lucky to have this outcome. He shot 3 cops in a no-knock raid, and the jury said that they were so egregious that they could not even give them immunity for what they did. He satisfied the use of force that's allowed to him in his state in order to defend himself against their actions. I won't go through, though, again, the nuances of the information are kind of tedious. You got to keep track of it. The point is that it was so egregious in the system, to a jury even underneath the system, that the cops can be brought to accountability when those actions are clearly outside, even though we've had cases that you would have thought would have run consistent with this and haven't. So, yes, shoot a cop. Again, I talked about the use of force continuum. They use it. You have to use it. You have to articulate that. They were able to do that in his case. He had an attorney and correctly defended himself, correctly articulated and the position and communicated, more importantly, to the jury what the point was, and was able to dissuade the jury from accepting the prosecutor's or their defense attorney's excuses for how vile they actually acted. And so that I can get one more quickly, cops and citizens will be forced to buy smart guns. I told you these smart things are not so intelligent, right? But everyone's going to have this electronic gun. Well, how many batteries batteries in self-defense now become linked? I don't know, folks. Do we want to do that? You need to read the article to see what they're planning for us all, if that seems to be going on. They're going to use smart guns, smart sensors, RFID, biometric sensors, all this just to use a gun. I think that's it's a unreasonable imposition on the Second Amendment, isn't it? So, as one answer. So, Merry Christmas, ChristmaHaniKwanzaRama Lama, Ding Dong, GeistaMythakrishnaMeleKalikimaka. Happy holiday this day, and I hope you all had a cool Yule. Thank you for tuning in today. Grimner, thank you for all you do. freedomsnetwork.com. Thank you for being the social network that you are. You can, Facebook I suppose, without the intrusion. And UCY.TV, I think. Jules, thank you very much for your telecast there, your simulcast. And all you terrestrial broadcasters, I do appreciate sending the message out. Folks, again, it's just what we do, not what we think or what we chat about, what we type. Typing's not going to solve nothing. Arguing with each other is certainly not going to do it. We're all underneath the same oppression called exactions of every kind. That's not my choice. That's not my opinion. It's written in law. 42 U.S.C. 1981. Go read it for yourself. White citizens were first in that list for the oppression, so don't think that that they're mincing words here. And for all y'all want to contact me, and thank you for those that have done this last week, markonthebeast@yahoo.com. It's a way I can see what's going on and get information, and I do thank you for that link, and thank you to the UCY chatter who presented that link for that video. Take care. I'll be here next week. Tech diffs, nature willing.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
So that's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass. Yeah. Check. Keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live.
The Anti-Media Radio with your host